Hello guys and welcome back for another Aeternum video. Recently, New World received a nice influx of players due to the PlayStation Plus system, which included the game in the free games rotation for July. Now, this should not lead you thinking that the game is becoming free to play for all platforms, as the buy to play model remains, at least for now. With that amount of new players, the servers got a bit more populated, especially in the lower level cities like Windsworth, Monarch's Bluff, Everfall and so on. It is a nice feeling to see so many newcomers on the island of Aeternum, wandering around doing quests and leveling up their characters. But all that is not our topic of discussion for today, as we need to address some things exactly to those new players, as otherwise they might be left with the feeling of weakness when it comes to the PvP at the endgame of New World Aeternum. For many of the old players in the game, it is quite clear which combination of items, perks, abilities, attributes and everything else is the most optimal one for the endgame content. Most of those active PvP players already have their perfect sets of gear, both for offense and defense, so the matchup between the veterans and the newcomers is not even a close fight. Unfortunately, we still don't have a proper matchmaking system when it comes to the matches in Arena or OPRs, so today I will try to explain one piece of the puzzle in order to help all of the new players to understand how the different systems work in New World. Now, it's also the time to remind you that I will do quite a lot of helpful content related to New World, so if you would like to see more and to learn faster, you should consider subscribing to the channel. Another place in which you can find a lot of information is our Discord community server with close to 1000 players. There you can also ask and share your thoughts and of course to receive feedback for your questions. All that is completely free and it will not cost you more than few clicks. Now let's not waste more time and go over today's topic, which will be defensive gems and how to set up our combination for the better protection while using them. In New World there are two ways for mitigation of incoming damage. The first is your armor and elemental armor values, which can be seen on the bottom left side of your equip load while you have your inventory menu open. They are based on the items you have equipped, and of course they will be higher if you use heavier equipment and lower for lighter equipment. The values are only affected by the armor pieces, as the weapons and the jewelries will not provide you with additional armor or elemental protection in that form. Each equip load in the game has a limit in the form of kilograms, so having the maximum amount possible for the desired equip load will always be the most beneficial way to obtain the best defensive possible from that point of view. For reference, the maximum weight of a light equipped player is 12.9 kilograms, for medium 22.9 kilograms, and for a full heavy loadout without the use of the shield, it would be 31.4 kilograms. This type of mitigation in the game has its own benefit and it gets more and more valuable the higher you scale it. For example, a heavy person that has more than 3000 armor and elemental armor will benefit a lot more from the damage mitigation, while in the low weight class such as the light gear, the benefit from it is almost not noticeable, as then you will have only around 900 and in some cases a little bit over 1000 with specific artifact combination. Okay, but is that the most important and efficient way of protecting yourself from enemies? Is it just that simple? Just armor and nothing else? Well, not really. The second system in place are the different damage type mitigations which are considered as resistance. They are specific to each type of damage which exists in the game, and in order to have them, you will have to slot cut gems in your gear. All the armor and jewelry pieces can have one slotted gem into them, and they will be the ones providing those defensive bonuses. The weapons, as you can imagine, can also be improved with gems, but there the effect will be on offensive instead of a defensive one. So let's take a quick example and see how exactly it works. If we have a fully equipped character, we will have a total of 10 items, 5 armor pieces, 2 weapons and 3 jewelries. This means that we have space for 8 defensive gems and 2 offensive ones. We can pick and choose what type of protection we want to have depending on the damage that we mostly receive in battles. There are 3 physical types of damage, which are Slash, Thrust and Strike, and each of them is applied by different weapons, and some of them can be found in the kit of the same weapon altogether. The magical types of damage are 6, and they are Fire, Ice, Void, Lightning, Nature and Arcane. Here it would be really nice practice for everyone to learn and get to know all the damage types in order to protect themselves correctly. Also, it is important to mention that any weapon in the game can split the damage type to a secondary element type by using an offensive gem for their weapon. So let's get back to our example and pretend that we want to protect ourselves to a specific type of damage, and let's take in that case the fire damage. There are 2 ways to generate fire damage protection. The first is by using rubies, which will provide us with 6% fire protection, or using opals, which will provide us with 2.5 elemental protection. The elemental protection will not only give us fire resistance, but also all other elements. This means that getting a specific damage mitigator will always be higher in terms of numbers, but it will leave us vulnerable to all the other elemental types. Therefore, you should consider well what exactly would be your goal: to reach most efficient one element, or to be all-rounded defense over all elements. Now let's take a quick look on the physical types, as there we can see some similarities. If we have to protect our character from thrust damage, for example, again we can use 2 gems. The first one is of course the Emerald, which provides us directly with 5% thrust protection, and the second option is to use an Onyx, which will again give us 2.5% protection to physical damages, which are Slash, Thrust and Strike. So again, as we can see, both on the elemental side and the physical side, there are 2 ways: the one specifically designed for a type of damage, and the one that is considered as all-rounded setup. Okay, so now that we know the opals and the onyxes are the ones for all-rounded gems for elemental and physical protection, while the other gems are providing us with specific protection. That's cool. But what about the turquoise one? It says that the turquoise gem provides 3% to both physical and elemental armor. Isn't that even better choice from everything that we already said, as it gives to both types 3% boost? The quick answer to this is no. The reason for that is that turquoise gem is boosting your armor and elemental armor values and not the resistance by 3%. This means that the numbers we've mentioned earlier, while we were talking about the equip loads, will be boosted by 3% for each gem, meaning that if you have 1000 armor, for example, you would get an additional 30 armor, which is almost nothing. The mitigation from the armor compared to the direct mitigation from all types of resistance is always in favor of the resistance, and therefore the turquoise gem is not that good when it comes to value. Okay, but there is another question which I'm sure you are asking yourselves. I've said that we have 8 pieces of gear which we can slot with protection gems. 5 of them are on the armor and 3 of them are on the jewelries. But is that really all? Will those 8 gems provide us the necessary protection, or there is other ways to obtain resistance? And the answer to that is again no. This is not all resistance amounts which we can obtain. There are 3 other ways which we can boost our resistance, and the first and the most common one, of course, is the amulets. One of the perks which every amulet can have is a type of resistance. You can slot any type of damage on your neck, and the value from that perk will be quite high at 15%. This is roughly equivalent to 3 slotted gems, so you can imagine how big of a difference this is. The second type of additional protection in the form of resistance are the so-called resistance potions, which are the fire absorption potion, void absorption potion, and so on for every other element, as well as armor and elemental armor potions in the form of oak flesh and gemstone dust. Now, those are working a little bit different from each other, but if you already remember what was the difference between armor and resistance, it wouldn't take you that much time to understand which one you would prefer more. The third and final source for additional resistance are the shields regardless of their weight and type. Each shield, the same way as all amulets, can have a type of protection to specific damage type, which can increase your defensive stats. Note that using a shield without the proper weapon like a sword or a flail will not provide you any bonuses, so please try to avoid that. Now I know that your next question will be what am I using and what are my suggestions for you, and here unfortunately there is no perfect answer. In theory as well as in practice, each class has its own weakness and different matchups. As I play mainly Fire Staff, I can tell you that strike damage is my least worry and therefore I try to avoid slotting it at all. Most of the traits which I have with enemies are other ranged users which are using elemental types of damage, as well as assassins with hatchets and sword, for which the priority damage is slash. This is how I plan out my protection for the gear, and if something doesn't feel right, you can always go and amend your gems to the correct ones depending on your enemies. With that in mind, I would suggest you to amend the gems on your jewelries and not the ones on your armor pieces, as the rune glass effects might become a bit too expensive to change them all the time. And if you don't know at this point what is a rune glass, don't worry about it too much, as we will cover that in the future videos. My current setup of gems is 5 opals in all my armor pieces, amulet with slash protection perk and a gem for thrust protection, ring with thrust protection gem, and an earring with fire or void gem depending on my matchup. I also use the absorption potions for fire and void damage mitigation in order to increase my survivability when I need it the most. With all that info, I hope that the picture for the gems and the mitigation of damage is a bit clearer for you. If you still have any questions or hesitations, let me know in the comments or simply reach out in our Discord so I can give you the answer and the further information if needed. For those of you who would like to see more stuff related to the game and more topics which can explain a bit better the system of New World, don't be shy and tell me what would you like to see next. As always, thank you so much for watching and I will see you on the next one.